Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Grind to Tier 10 video. Now I've decided to turn this series into a bit of a I talk about whatever I feel like talking about series. And today I'm the first gameplay you're seeing me. Hold on, let me get the screen the way I like it. There we go. Today I'm driving the M41 HMC, which is an artillery piece. And that's actually the subject I wanted to touch on first. Because, that artillery gets flak in World of Tanks is, well, basically a known thing. It's a standard, you know? Everybody hates the artillery and the artillery players. Yeah. Is it really that easy to play artillery? The clickers, as sometimes I've seen being called. A whole lot of other bad things are being said about these artillery players. And why is this actually? Because I've actually mentioned this in one of my KV2 videos. The KV2 also comes around the corner and completely annihilates you with a single click. And it's also very luck driven, so to say. Because, yeah, the accuracy of that thing is actually quite horrible. As a matter of fact, the accuracy of an artillery piece is far worse than the KV2. At least in the situations you usually find it. That shot was pretty much fully aimed at the spot exactly where the ARL just parked itself, but I still landed nowhere near it. And this isn't actually that bad of an artillery piece when you look at the accuracy of it. So what's my idea on this artillery thing? The artillery has an enormous amount of damage and horrible accuracy, which basically means if RNGesus is against you, you're not going to do any kind of damage, even though you have such a high alpha gun. Now, is this fair? I personally don't think it is. Not for the artillery player and not for the players who are actually facing the artillery. Because, yeah, the artillery player, even when he's... you need a lot of map awareness for an artillery piece. This is something people usually underestimate. You're constantly watching the minimap, seeing where enemy tanks are, where your allied tanks are, where you're going to need to put the next shot. Also keep an eye on where tanks were last spotted, how likely they were to move, etc, etc, etc. There's a whole lot of things you have to keep an eye on as an artillery piece you don't have to do as a normal tank, or you can get away with not doing, I should say it like this. And even if you do these things and you have your shot perfectly aimed at a position, you still is a very large chance you'll miss. And just because of this extremely horrible accuracy. Now here you see me switch to the other side. I've been constantly keeping an eye on how far this OI is and how likely it is I'm going to get spots from that angle. Now here the AMX gets spotted. Now I'm anticipating enemies that are hiding in the bushes over there to start shooting, and I'm hoping that perhaps one of them gets spotted. So I switch my my aiming to the other end to see if maybe somebody gets spotted and I can react to that before it's actually... There we go. So now I can actually take a shot. Try to give enough lead for this. Fortunately, it lands more or less where I aim it. If it would have landed where I aimed it, that tank would have been dead. It's that simple. Now I have to make a decision. Do I stay aimed to the left side, or do I go to the right and try and assist this OI, which only has one light tank to assist it? Now at this point, looking back at this replay, I kinda think that I should have. I made the decision not to do this in game, but hey. Anyway, what I'm getting at is there's a lot more decision making and planning required for playing artillery than people give it credit for. And it's not always rewarded, because even if you aim your if you're at the correct spot, you're fully aimed in on the location, you might still miss. On the other side of this story, if you're playing your tanks and an artillery piece is going to fire at you or is aiming at you, the first warning you get that there's this doom cannon aiming at you is you exploding. At least that's the case with a lot of these larger or when you're a slightly lightly armored tank. On the other side, the tanks that aren't lightly armored have so much That was again an unlucky shot, but oh well. The heavily armored tanks are so slow they can't really dodge these shells properly. So it's a bit of a lose-lose situation as it's currently implemented. And yeah, as I understand it, they have plans for changing this, but again, this is also not the first time that Wargaming have claimed they're going to change this. I would like the artillery to still have some oomph, you know, to still do a fairly large amount of damage. But to be honest, I think how much alpha does this gun have? Yeah, you get 700 alpha for a tier 5 tank. That's a lot. That's really a lot. I think 500 should be plenty. But then I would like a faster reload. I would like my shells to actually land where I aim them. The aim time is actually not that big of an issue for me. That's part of being an artillery player, planning ahead. So I don't care if the aim time is a little bit longer than it otherwise would have been for other tanks. So here I take my shot and it lands. Now I have to make a decision. He's no longer spotted. Am I going to try and take another shot at him? I eventually make the decision to do just that, try and take a shot, but if we're being honest, it's highly unlikely that this KV-85 is still here. At any rate, at tier 5 it's actually not that bad yet. But at the higher tiers this problem gets more exponentially big. So the alpha gets even bigger, the accuracy gets even less, the reload time gets even longer, and even if you take your perfect shots, so to say, you might still miss as an artillery piece. And on the other hand, if you're driving your medium tank, even if the shell doesn't even land on you, you might still get one-shotted, which is just completely ridiculous. Especially because you don't get any warning for this at all. Now I decide to shift my targets, so here I'm going to keep an eye on this hill. I'm expecting people to come over this hill. There's not really a lot holding them back at this point. Yeah, there's a T-25 and I can't really see what's there as well. An M5 or an M6, is that possible? Yeah, I think an M6. At any rate, I'm not counting on these people to actually protect me properly. So I'm going to estimate that these tanks are going to take a little while to make their way over the hill. So until that happens, I'm going to see if this KV-85 decides to show his face again. There he is. Fortunately, I had to turn my hull in order to hit him, or to get close to aiming at him. Still moving a bit back and forth. I'm going to take a questionable shot here. And I don't hit him. So now I should really be turning my attention back to the other flank, which I'm doing now. I decide to try and pre-aim for the Su-100. It's the most dangerous tank at this point. And I think I can one-shot him if I hit him correctly. Take a while to aim. Unfortunately hit the ridge line there. It was also not completely fully aimed. I was a bit too late here in repositioning my tank, so I miscalculated how long it would take this tank to, or these tanks of the enemy, to make their way across the hill. Now I'm fully aimed. Or, well, pretty much fully aimed. I guess right about where the shot is going to be. And I get it perfectly. Now these kinds of shots are not easy to make. I mean, this is the kind of stuff people say like, oh, artillery is supposed to prevent camping, why is this happening? And this guy was spotted, he drove in a straight line straight towards where he knows the artillery is. He can count on me being there aiming for him. He should try and evade these kind of shots. He's extremely lucky he isn't dead yet. There's already been 2 shots that had a very high likelihood of hitting him, that he just survived because of RNGesus. Now I'm considering taking a blind shot, but I decide to wait. Because it's... Oh, I actually do take the shot. Well, that's a bit of a questionable shot, to be honest. If I'm looking back at this, I I'm definitely not happy with this the shooting here. Also, I'm starting to get a little bit close to running out of ammunition. I only have 5 shots left in my magazine. But I also know that this VK is something I can pen. So I'm aiming. And unfortunately it flies into his tracks rather than the superstructure. If it had flown into the superstructure he would have been dead. It's that simple. The penetration on this gun is high enough to penetrate the side of the VK. So yeah. Now there goes the VK 3601H. Here I decide to get into an ambush position, or try and make my way over the hill here to try and shotgun him. Unfortunately I overestimate my engine power, and it also looks like this T25 has got things covered. Now there's a Panzer 1C there, who's probably quite stuck. So he's not going to be too big of a problem. I've taken a fair few blind shots at this point. No idea how many of them did any damage, but a fair few of them did nothing, I'm quite sure, as these were shots on very low health targets. Pre-aimed at this spot, hoping to find the Panzer 1C there. Can do a fair bit of damage to that T25. T25 is not very well armored. Unfortunately the Panzer 1C was outside of my firing angle there. Now I pre-aim for the artillery. I'm expecting them to be somewhere in that corner, but I also see that the left flank here still has some enemies on them. That Stug is not very healthy anymore. Probably not going to live for very long, even if I choose not to shoot at him. But it would appear that my allies are having a bit of problems penetrating the front of this Stug. So I take him out. Now it's just waiting for the artillery to be spotted. VK got annihilated. And the waiting game has begun. It's not that I've done too much damage this match. I mean, I wouldn't expect me having done much over 1,500 damage in this match. And I've shot pretty much every single shell in my magazine that I have. I mean, to be fair, I have taken a fair few questionable shots this round, but yeah, it does kind of show you what it's like to play artillery in this game. It's not always that easy. Now I'm actually really lucky that that shot flew wide, because it destroyed my enemy, but let's take a look at the post-game stats. Oh, here we are in the post-game stats, and we can see that of all these shots I've taken, I've only hit 7 of them. And I did 200 damage on this Stug with 2 shots, so that's 100 damage each shot. This SU-100, I did 250 damage, 1 shot. Not 700, just 250. And here, this VK, I did 200 damage as well. This KV-85, 200 damage as well. Now this AMX got one-shotted, of course, but then again there's quite a few tanks that can one-shot this tank. And it's not like this was a bottom tier match for me. It's not like this was a tier 7 match and I was playing in my tier 5 artillery. This was a tier 6 match. So this doom damage that this orbital laser cannon is definitely not the case for all artillery. I mean, the higher tier artillery, this is definitely more the case, but this high damage versus low chance to hit is driven to an extreme there. And I might on paper have a grand total of 700 alpha damage, but in practice I rarely actually do that kind of damage. This poor Stug had actually quite a nice match, so it's almost sad that I destroyed him here. But to be honest, he was stationary for quite a long time. So if you're stationary, you're spotted, and you're one of the last tanks in the, left in the game, you can just expect to be hit by artillery at that point. Now as you can see, 1500 damage I did, fired 20 shots of which only 7 hit. Now, apparently 7 penetrations, but I slightly disagree with this term here, because penetrations would suggest that I actually penetrated the target and did full damage, which is of course not the case. But now let's take a look at another tank with a high alpha gun on tier 5. So here we are in another tier 6 match, very comparable matchmaking. We've got a 44% chance to win, just like the last match, although I must admit I'm not really sure where this, where XVM is basing this on, because there's a fair few players on our team which have a considerably higher efficiency than the enemy team. But apparently XVM seems to think this is a 44% for us. And I'm driving my Panzer IV-H. It's a medium tank, it's quite fast, but it does have a derp gun with a 410 alpha gun. Which is less, of course, than the gun on the artillery that I just played. But then again, it does reload considerably faster and it has considerably higher accuracy. So yeah, I'm playing today with Lord Doom and Nottinel, 2 friends of mine. If you're Dutch and you find this this last name a bit funny, that was the point, I think. Anyway, we're going to see how I do in this Panzer IV-H. Now, in this last match, the tank destroyer I killed at the end didn't complain. But you find this, or you see this happening quite a lot. That somebody gets artied when he had a nice game and he blames the arty for dying. I already explained last game that I think that he died because of my artillery shell was quite understandable and he should have expected this. Maybe he even did, so that's why he didn't complain. But we've all been there. We've all seen this player who's been sitting stationary in this spot, who's been shooting and then gets destroyed or annihilated by artillery, or otherwise has not been stationary but driving in a straight line in a very predictable fashion, and then gets destroyed and then blames everybody but himself for, or basically blames the artillery for him dying. Now at the start here I immediately catch a shot from this Excelsior. My angling was also a bit off. But now that I'm here, I don't have to pay attention to the left flank where this Leopard currently is. I don't have to pay attention to this M6. I don't have to pay attention to the VK3601H that is there. I mean, I don't have to be blind to the minimap, but I can ignore a fair bit of it. Fortunately, that shot flies high, but yeah, it was also a bit of a rushed shot as well. So I suppose it's not that bad. Nottinel has taken a very aggressive position here up north, who's currently not being punished for it, but there's a very real chance that he'll be shot in the foreseeable future. Lord Doom is protecting the lower bit of this pass, or the church I should say. And so far I've not been able to get too big of a contribution to this battle. I'm waiting on, I'm deliberately waiting a little bit here, just so people are no longer paying attention to me. Unfortunately again my shot flies high. This is again the accuracy thing. This is derp guns in general, but I am getting really unlucky here. Now I get my first damage. Now OI is a very heavily armored tank from the front. So that this tank only gets 71 damage from an HE shell, I would not expect too much more from a... Fortunately hit the wall there, very unfortunate, because this T-28 is very poorly armored, so I would have easily one-shotted him. I decided to repair my tracks there, but so far again I don't really have to pay attention to the map. I don't really have to, I mean I have to on occasion take a glance at it, but it's not that I have to anticipate where my shots are going to be, where I'm likely to be able to land this shot as the artillery is now doing on our team. And there, 110 damage. I've seen this 110 damage in my artillery a fair few times last match. So yeah, I mean, this tank would not be hated. The tank that I drove last match would be hated. And basically it's the same kind of gun, low accuracy, high damage. But this tank is supposedly high skill, whilst the artillery is supposedly low skill. And I just disagree with this. I mean, there's a fair bit of luck always involved in playing artillery. simply because artillery has such poor accuracy. If you have such a terrible accuracy, you just need luck to hit your targets, period, even if you're playing just very good. And that's just not the case in any other type of tank. I mean, this tank does have a bit of RNGs involved. Because of the low accuracy on the derp gun, but all in all it's not really that bad. The aiming circle is not that large. The average artillery, even if you're fully aimed, the aiming circle is more outside the enemy tanks than it is inside. So you're... that was a poor explanation. When you've got this aiming circle, you never just cover the tank. There's always the tank and like another 3 or 4 tanks of area around the tank that the shell might also hit. And this is really, I think, the biggest problem with these type of machines. Get very lucky that my track sheet that shot. Well, a bit unlucky that that KV-85 got that little damage. But all in all, yeah, it's a slow match for me here. A little bit of damage here, a little bit of damage there. And I think we've, that's also a bit the thing with, I think is the biggest thing about artillery versus a tank like this, is that artillery, you don't know when he's aiming at you. When I poke around the corner here, they see me aiming, and when the shot then finally lands, that means they're just not looking around them, rather than anticipating what is going on. Evading artillery takes a lot more situational awareness than evading a normal tank does. And if that's more difficult for most people. It's a lot more difficult for most people to have situational awareness rather than just looking around them. I mean, this is also a type of situational awareness, but not like artillery. With artillery you need to think, okay, I've been stationary in the spot for a while now. I've probably been spotted, or I've seen this in my sixth sense that I've been spotted. How likely is it that this artillery is going to take a shot at me? And how likely is it that I would then be, or that he would hit? And if you don't do this, it's very likely that you're going to die because of this artillery. And yeah, let's be honest, we all know the average World of Tanks player is not really that good at World of Tanks. So the average World of Tank player really doesn't anticipate that well. Now this OI here, really in a spot of bother thanks to me. I'm deliberately aiming for areas where I could also be retracking him. I'm doing this so that he doesn't get a chance to do damage against me whilst he is doing damage, or well, I am doing damage against him, even if it's not a little. I'm trying to get side shots on him here, because the side armor of this OI is not very good. Now, that was a bit of a gamble, but I was quite sure that he was still reloading. So that was the end of this replay. Let's go take a look at the post-game stats. So here we are in the post-game stats, and as we can see, going to go to the details report first. I only fired 4 extra shells this match versus the match before. I hit 17 of these rather than the only 7 of the last match. And I was able to do 1,000 damage with this. In my artillery I did more damage, but to be fair to the artillery piece, those were also lightly armored targets. Almost half of my hits were to this OI, who's just brutally armored, and I never really got into a position where I could outflank him. So I had to basically face his frontal armor. Now, to conclude, what do I think about artillery as it is in World of Tanks? At the lower tiers, it's not that bad, and I think it's most of the time poor situational awareness of people that gets them caught. Now, as for the argument that artillery is for stopping camping, that's only the case if the location where they're camping is in a bush or somewhere open. Because artillery would love nothing more than for all the camping people to get spotted and annihilated by them. or at least get annihilated by them. Stationary targets are very easy to hit. Unfortunately, a lot of the camping positions in maps, or the ones that are used a lot, have artillery cover as well as regular cover for being spotted and such. Now I don't play a lot of TDs, so I don't know how fair the maps currently are for TDs with this respect, but I personally feel like that should be a very rare thing, having both normal cover and or concealment as well as cover for artillery or cover in general. Now, one problem with this is light tanks also use this cover, and for them the game is already quite difficult without the removal of even more concealment for them. So perhaps there should be less random rocks in the map. At the back of the base, for instance. I don't know. I'm not a map designer, but I feel like it's a bit too easy to camp at the back of the map, where you're both in concealment and in cover. So the artillery basically can't do its job properly because of the map design. But also, I was going to make a conclusion out of this. Right, so let's actually do this. I think the biggest problem with artillery is that they have too high of an alpha and too low of an accuracy. I think the biggest problem people have with artillery is that there is nothing quite like artillery to punish you for poor situational awareness. If you're not aware of what's going on the rest of the map, you can still play a reasonably okay match in a heavy tank, or a tank destroyer, or a medium tank. However, if you have very poor situational awareness, and you don't notice that you're the last tank on your flank and the other two tanks were destroyed by artillery, you can count on being shot by artillery next. Otherwise, on the other side of the spectrum, if you're one of the last tanks alive and you get spotted and the artillery is still in the match, this is also a variable here, you can also count on being shot. This is situational awareness. You need to keep in mind that there is artillery. There's always this extra tank which could be aiming at you. And as long as you move a bit in unpredictable fashion, it's not that difficult to evade artillery. They have a very long reload time. And personally, I would think increased accuracy would actually help you. Because, for instance, in the last match, I took a shot at an artillery piece, was a lot faster than I had anticipated. So my shot, where I aimed it, was completely wrong. But because the shot flew wide, I accidentally hit the artillery piece. And I could imagine this gets on people's nerves. I mean, for the artillery, it's usually annoying, but when it's not annoying, it's super annoying for the person getting hit. Basically, it would take the RNG a bit out of evading artillery shots, and basically it's down to the skill of the aiming of the artillery piece versus your ability to dodge it, and I think this would also be already an improvement. Now, anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please leave a like, and I'll see you for the next one.